So we're going to go back to page 6. And on page 6, we started talking about what does biology study. And you were exactly right. You told me in class today that bio means life. Biology is the study of life. And life is made of cells. The smallest unit of life is a cell. You've seen pictures of cells before. But the interesting question is, what are cells made of? And it turns out that cells themselves are made of matter. They're made of molecules. And so we're going to take some time today just to make sure that we really understand what a molecule is and how a molecule is different from a cell, but how molecules can build up the cell. So, when we're back on page 6, we really want to make sure that we have put a big star by the fact that the smallest unit of life is a cell. And we could even draw a cell. You know, if you start to draw a cell, what you're actually drawing is the cell membrane, the outer part of the cell. Well, what is a cell membrane made of? We're going to learn that cell membranes are made of molecules called phospholipids. And they're made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. That's what a phospholipid is. So, before we can get into learning about cells, we want to make sure that we really know what molecules are. Molecules are multiple atoms held together, but what are atoms? Atoms are the individual units of matter. So what's really cool is that this pen is made of matter, and I'm made of matter. This pen, because it's plastic, has carbon in it. I'm made of cells. I have carbon in my cells. But the pen is not living, and I am living. And so what we really want to understand is that we have these basic, tiny units of things called matter. Everything in the universe is made of matter. And those matter happens in repeating units. So we start with this word atoms. Atoms are the smallest part of matter. That's what we just had before. Atoms are the smallest part of matter. And when we put atoms together, we form molecules. Now, like we said the other day, the most important elements to life are CHO, C-H-O, and then nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Remember the phospholipid? The phospholipid has CHO and phosphorus. So, I do want to make sure that you put a little star again here, and that a cell is living, but these are not. A molecule is not living. An atom is not living. So something like just carbon, that is an atom. Something like carbon dioxide, that is a molecule. But neither of these are living yet. It's not until we start to build really big molecules that we actually put those together to build cells. So, when we have elements and we bind them together, they actually share electrons. If you remember what an atom is, it has protons, neutrons, and electrons. So electrons are shared, and we form a bond, and those are a molecule. So CO2 is a molecule. H2O is a molecule. We will begin to group molecules based on what they contain. If a molecule contains CH and O, they have to have all three, and we call it an organic compound. This is something like a carbohydrate. Interesting. Carb for carbon, O for oxygen, hydrogen for hydrogen. Organic molecules are what build our cells. So that phospholipid that I talked to you about has carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and phosphorus. But in order to be organic, and this is an important word, it has to have CHO. Now, I do want to take a second and remind you that sometimes science words are used differently outside of science. If you were to go to the grocery store and ask someone about organic, they wouldn't talk to you about CHO. They would talk to you about how that fruit or vegetable or animal was raised on a farm and were they using pesticides. So try to remember that in science class, organic refers to a molecule that contains CHNO. If it doesn't have CHNO, at least, if it doesn't at least have those three, then we call it inorganic. So carbon dioxide, inorganic. Water, inorganic. Turns out water is one of the most important inorganic compounds. When we start to look at life, when we start to take carbohydrates and what are called lipids and proteins and nucleic acids, and we start to build cells, all life has carbon in it. So whether you're looking at a human or a plant or a bacteria or a fungus, all living things have carbon. And they use 4 important organic macromolecules. We're going to talk much more about these macromolecules. Micro, we know, micro means little. Macro means large. So we're going to talk about molecules like C6, H12, O6. That's pretty large if you just compare it to CO2. Just 3 atoms here. Here there's 24 atoms. So this is a much bigger molecule than these small molecules. And so we're going to talk about 4 really big molecules: proteins, carbs, lipids, and nucleic acids, and how we build cells out of those 4 things. This is actually the end of the first little section of notes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write a summary box. Excuse me. Summarizing is a really important skill, because summarizing means that you have stopped and gone back and looked back at what you had learned before. And that you chose, you evaluated, is this important or is this important? And you chose what was most important. When you write your summary box, please include at least 2 vocabulary words and refer to a diagram. You'll notice that the diagrams are numbered. So if you decide that you want to write about the scientific method and you want to refer to figure 1.1a, you can. You can go back and talk about designing a hypothesis and changing the independent and dependent variable. And there are your 2 vocabulary words: independent variable, dependent variable. And you would refer back to figure 1.1. If you think that you would rather talk about matter and molecules, then you can refer to figure 1.1c. But this is the end of the notes, a short section, so just make sure that you fill out this summary box and that you go on and take your Google form. Have a great rest of your day.